An Israeli strike on Gaza City late Sunday killed Al Jazeera correspondent Anas al-Sharif and 5 other media workers. The group was in a tent near Shifa Hospital, according to local officials. The Israel Defense Forces said al-Sharif was targeted as he was a terrorist operating under the guise of a journalist serving as a Hamas cell leader involved in attacks against Israel. The IDF noted that in October it published documents seized in Gaza showing the affiliation of al-Sharif with Hamas.
This crime is not a spur-of-the-moment crime, but rather an extension of the series of Israeli crimes that have been ongoing since October 7th. Journalists in this war have become a legitimate target. Killing them is a duty to obscure the word and attempt to hide the truth.
Al Jazeera denied Israeli accusations and accused it of targeting its reporters. Al-Sharif was known for reporting from frontline areas others didn't get access to, and was granted rare access to document the release of the former Israeli hostage, Agam Berger. Israeli advocates in the war posted today also pictures Al-Sharif took in the past with Hamas top officials, among them killed leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar. The strike comes as journalists continue to work in Gaza under severe shortage of food, electricity, and safe shelter. The incident has sparked condemnations from Arab governments as well as turning to be a top headline in the media, adding to international pressure on Israel over civilian casualties.
Joining us for more here in the studio, I-24 News senior host and correspondent Nicole Zedeck. Nicole, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. Well, these are the events, and yet the criticism or the backlash surrounding it far exceeds the borders of this conflict.
It really does. There's the usual suspects that you would assume are going to condemn something like this. Of course, Al Jazeera, considering this is one of their journalists that was killed. Also Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, all condemning this, stating that Israel is deliberately going after journalists to try and harpen the freedom of press. But what's more surprising than Al Jazeera, Hamas, and the PIJ condemning something like this, I looked on pretty much all of the front pages of the major news organizations, CNN, BBC, The Guardian, Sky News. This is their top story when you go on their website. And it's stating that Israel targeted a journalist inside Gaza. Now, Israel is stating that this was a journalist who has ties to Hamas, and we published those ties to Hamas back in October. So this is no new information for anyone. And more of the pictures and evidence that seems to be coming out shows that this journalist that had at least very strong connections to the main leaders of Hamas as well. But how it's being spun, it's certainly because he is such a prominent journalist in Gaza. This is a man that had some 500,000 followers on X, also known as Twitter, 1.6 million followers on Instagram. So this is a man that well beyond just the confines of Al Jazeera were watching his reporters. The general public was tuning in on social media as well. And this is what paints such a tricky picture when you hear Israel denying something like this and showing the evidence, but the mainstream media is still taking this and stating that this was a journalist that was killed because somehow the connection between journalist and terrorist inside the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, we have seen this multiple times over the course of this war.
And generally speaking, this, to an extent ambiguous, to an extent clear-cut question, hence answer whether you can really disconnect Gaza from Hamas and Hamas from Gaza. And we've seen it throughout this war manifesting itself in many different shapes and form, let it be the Shifa hospital itself at the earlier days of the conflict, and yet the gap here between the Israeli state of mind and the Hamas way of presenting things is so different. It's so far away that it is easy to find an in-between here. It's either or. There's no middle here.
And this is what's so difficult, even when there are journalists who want to tell the truth inside Gaza. We have to remember that Gaza is controlled by Hamas. And many of these journalists, if they do want to speak out against Hamas, they could be executed for doing just that. And so when you talk about freedom of press, there is no such thing inside Gaza. And you hear whistleblower after whistleblower who state that this is not the reality that we see inside Gaza. Al Jazeera, which is funded by Qatar, has an inside exclusive access to Gaza. We've seen this with the hostage releases that they paraded these ceremonies, and Al Jazeera was the only one actually publishing it. And that's where this journalist had exclusive access to one of the hostages. And so you talk about freedom of speech and freedom of press that now many of these different media companies are blasting Israel for going after. Yeah. There truly is no such thing inside the Gaza Strip, not for lack of journalists. I do want to add, some of them do try and get the truth out there, but you're under a terror organization that is running the Gaza Strip. So oftentimes their hands are tied or they will be executed.
There's just